the Random Podcast with Raffy and Chandra.
Welcome back to another episode of the Random Podcast with Raffy and Chandra.
Yay.
There we go. The new soundboard is coming. And what's that?
This is going to help everybody stop playing it right now.
So that's going to be what we play when there is a message. So please let me annoy Chandra a bit more. Leave us a message on
Please don't do
Spotify or
No
it's meant to
message,
be
I'm
for
gonna have to
swearing. So
listen
if
to
you say,
Raffy and his beep.
yeah, this is for censoring things, but it also sounds like Morse code, right?
That's going to kill some people on their headphones.
Anyway, this week's episode is one that we do get asked here and there, especially now that we are a bit more senior in the medical system, of how did you choose to be a doctor, or how did you get to your specialty and all that stuff. So like, actually, I haven't actually heard Chandra's version of it, so we've kind of been friends since med school, so I haven't heard the pre-story. So we thought we'd make an episode and explore that. Huh?
Yeah, well, you're like, you got here somehow, so that'll do.
Yeah. Why don't you start? Like, I actually haven't heard this version of it. Like, was this
Well,
always something you wanted to do? Were you?
Well, I think it was kind of one of those, high likelihood of happening anyway, because both my parents are medical. And so it becomes a bit of that's what you see at home all the time. So even as a kid, like I remember there's just like this giant cardboard box, which is just like full of all the different tablets, or, if someone's got a cold or whatever, just a big cardboard box. You go fish it out, there's some drugs in there. And so there's always like medical stuff around. A lot of talk is, medical around and things like that. So I think that probably does, make it likely. But I think it also helped because I like the sciencey aspect of things, and then med ties in with a few other things, which I'll talk about later. But I think just having that exposure and being around it just makes it more likely to happen.
Was there any other alternatives you thought during school? Like, was this always like from primary school onwards, you kind of had that inkling and it's kind of stuck on through? Or was it kind of like at some point you were like, maybe this, maybe that? Or was there like, what would have been second if it wasn't med?
Yeah, I think still it would have been like something to do with making things, because I remember like some of the other things I used to like doing was making stuff. So, as a kid, I quite liked, making random stuff, whether it be like pulling something apart and trying to put it back together, or one thing which was I only kind of remembered about it when I got onto the boat, and I was like, oh yeah, as a kid, I actually made little boats out of fiberglass and balsa wood with radio controlled stuff in them. And I was like, oh yeah, I have made fiberglass things before, many, many, many years ago.
Nice. So it's come full circle.
Yeah. So I think I've always liked tinkering, and so it's interesting around med school, application time. It's like, oh yeah, of course, med first, but I was like, oh yeah, I've got to put some other preferences down. So I think for me, it was probably the other things for engineering was probably the next thing.
Yeah.
That, or I also really liked cars, so I was like, I could just draw cars for a living. That's another thing.
Yeah. Fair enough.
I think those are my sort of three main option kind of things. But I think for me, the biggest thing is like, there's so much exposure. You just see it around all the time.
Yeah.
And then the more you learn about it, you're like, it's pretty flexible kind of thing, actually. You can kind of make of it what you want.
Well, I think that's going to be one of those things that might surprise people, because I think from the outside, it looks pretty rigid. And to an extent, it kind of is, but it's kind of like, anyway, we'll get into that later. But my journey into med
that's one of the things that I sort of saw in my parents as well, because like my mom's a bit more, she's more serious, like, a bit more hardcore. People person. So he does psychiatry, whereas my mom does clinical microbiology and infectious diseases, and used to like run labs in Sri Lanka. So very different styles. So like it can fit most personalities. So that was kind of nice to
Yeah,
see.
that's true. That's true. That's true. Um, yeah, actually, if you think about everyone that went through med school with us, there was a lot of personalities, and they've all kind of mostly found a space in med.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. So that was interesting to see. What about
Yeah.
you? How did you end up there?
Yeah, mine was very different to yours. So as a kid, before jobs become a big thing in primary school, it was like I used to really like painting and creating stuff, right? But it was
Mm,
a bit more on the art stuff. I loved Lego, and also there was I just remember like my grandma went to Hajj in Saudi Arabia, and she brought back this thing called Z-Knights. It's like this robot transformer, just walks and whatnot. But this was my
mm,
first experience with like a model kit. Like, you get like all the pieces in like
yep.
that plastic frame, and you break it off and you put it together, and there's like a little motor.
Mm,
And like the fact that this existed, that you got this thing that you put together and it worked, blew my mind. Like it just like I was just like, holy crap! And it does this, and it's not just rolls around; it actually bends at the knee, and it's all these plastic bits, and the things stick together. Like that was robots. Like it's I'm creating something. I like loved it. And then I remember we went to India actually for a holiday, and I still remember this book. It probably changed a lot of things for me, and it was called Children's Knowledge Bank. It was like this, those general knowledge books that are very popular
yeah,
in
yeah. I remember
like
like
this.
used to have was it the kids and I think it was the Kids Encyclopedia Britannica. There was like a
Yeah,
whole set of the books. They were great.
yeah. So
I
like
remember that
the
distinctly.
Britannica was kind of like much more broader, had illustrations. Children's Knowledge Bank was like made in India, so it's like hardcore science in there. It's like the physics of like like a little paragraph, but it's like the
It's
physics
like
of
you're
black
five. Why do
holes.
you not know the physics of
Yeah,
the
yeah, right.
vacuums?
And I remember it was six volumes. They got it
Mm,
as like a little cardboard box, and I remember I used to just love flicking through it and reading stuff. And at that point, I was like, you know what? I want to be a scientist, probably like physics or chem, because that's like where I was kind of drawn to. And then when we moved here, like a lot of it was just the usual adjustment to new country and culture and all that stuff. And that's
mm.
when like ages ago they had given like I think we borrowed my cousin's Commodore 64, and I liked tinkering with technology, but it was only in primary school. Like there was a computer lab. Like hello. I was given Logo Writer, which was like the logos programming language with the turtles, and you could draw stuff. And I remember in grade 5 or 6 figuring out how you could actually make it into an interactive game, like my version of Space Invaders,
Oh,
like
yeah.
just with controls and everything. And like I remember everyone else in the class going, "This was boring." Then I made that, and they're like, "Hang on, that's a game." And I was like, "Yeah," and it just blew their minds because it wasn't designed to be that. And so
Mm.
I thought I was going down the tech line. And then as high
Okay.
school progressed, I did a bit of tech, but then, I did a bit of like, I can't remember what it's called, but it was basically just doing the design work for like either architecture or like industrial design. And
Mm.
I actually really liked like you building stuff. Like I actually really liked woodwork and metalwork and just physically building things. Um, but
Yeah,
the
like
design stuff
woodworking
was
class was
probably
great. And still,
yeah,
yeah, there's still a table from high school at home, which
yeah. My
I think
mom
it's in
still
my
has
dad's
a
office at the moment, which is holding up the printer and hasn't fallen apart.
my mom still has like we got pieces of acrylic and we bent it into photo frames and made like a
Mm.
wooden boat. So those are still there. My mom's got like a photo in that acrylic frame still, and yeah, they're all still there. But I think I was leaning more towards like architecture-y because it had a little bit more of the sciencey, physicsy stuff to it, or like that sort of engineering. And then there was this other bit which was kind of just pure hardcore coding because I was learning HTML. Like I literally used to go to the library and get books on CSS. Like I taught myself like written
Mm.
CSS. That was like how I just remember. I think I discussed this ages ago. It's like, yeah, some guy I made some really crappy website, and this guy was like, seriously, he can do better, and like went and relearned, like actually looked through design books on how to. So I thought I was going down that line, and then there was
Mm.
like, so like I think we both skipped years, right, in high school or something.
Yeah, yeah, because
Yeah,
I guess when I came from Sri Lanka, I think the grades didn't quite match up, and in Warrnambool, the way they did it is they grouped. think it was like prep 1 and 2 was together in one class, and then it was like grade 3 and 4 in one class, and grade 5 and 6 in the other class. It's just the way they did it. So I think I ended up just going from one to the next to the next. And so then
Yeah, no,
that
mine
kind of put me in
was
a weird place, which
yeah,
worked well for me. But yeah.
no, because for me in year 9, I got called to the principal's office, and I thought I was in trouble because we hacked all these games like Age of Empires onto the network. And I was like, I never did it. I made other people do it, right? So I
Yeah.
was like,
Hey,
crap! I
culpable
can only
denied.
throw people under the bus so
Yeah.
far. I just
I've
showed
got
them
a
how it
list
was
of
done.
names.
Yeah.
It's like, I've got a list of names. I'm willing to give up these people. What am I getting on?
So I was like, crap. So literally, me and this other guy, who I was like, man, if you've been implicated in this, like, truly, you had nothing to do with it, right? Like,
Mm.
I stole the passwords. I knew how
Yeah.
to access it. I told them how to do it. I never did it myself. I genuinely felt bad for the other guy because I was like, look, if this is what it's about, I'll take the fall
Mm-mm.
because he
Mm-mm.
literally had nothing to do with it, right? And he was a good friend of mine. So I had this apology, like we're both going up and what the hell have we done? Because just us two. It's like, have they figured it out? But I'm like, well, if they figured it out, then they're clearly wrong. Like you had nothing to do with it. All right. I had this apology and I was like going in and then they're like, and I remember the principal going like, oh, what year are you in? Like 9. Like, oh crap, it's going to be one of those responsibility speeches. And I was just about to say, I'm really sorry. And she's like, how would you like to go to year 11 next year? I'm like, I'm sorry. And then I stopped. I'm like, hang on, what?
I didn't write a
And
response for this.
yeah. So basically, because of that, I ended up
Mm.
doing. So we skipped a year, but because of how the subjects were structured, and it was only the two of us, so we basically had to sit down and go, what do we both like, and what do we pick?
Mm.
And so we went down more sciencey stuff, and
Yep.
biology was probably my weakest science. But then skipping to year 11, it actually got interesting, and I was like, oh,
Mm.
like the medical side of things was really, really like it was interesting, but I think I still liked coding. And then eventually,
Mm.
when it came to the end of high school and it was time to apply, I just remember going, I really like, my parents had convinced me that I'd just be in a call center if I went down the tech line. And they were like, no, you cannot do technology. I was like, all right, fine. Like, I find all of it equally interesting. So it's very hard for me to choose. So I was like, I could probably, I think I applied to architecture or some sort of designy sort of engineering thing. And like, I think that's how my brain works. But then I was like sitting there going, look, genuinely, if I get into that, I'll sit there going, what if I did med? Because med's kind of got all the pharmacology stuff, and I found like the organic chemistry stuff kind of interesting as well. And I knew that if I
Also,
went
it
down
is the
med,
correct Brown choice,
yeah. So, and then if I did med, I'd always sit there going, oh, what if I did the design stuff and the tech stuff and all that stuff, right? But
Mm.
like, okay, this is one of those unwinnables. Like, it does not matter what I do because the other thing has something that I want. And then I sat there and I was like, I really can't decide. And then I was like, if I choose med and it goes wrong, the only advantage, and it literally what it boiled down to, I was like, I can always blame my parents. I can just ride that high and like use that as a thing for forever and a day, right? Like anything goes wrong, like you made me choose med, right?
Mm.
And literally it was that I was like, all right, well, I'll apply to med. And my parents were like, oh, you can only apply to 2 med schools. So literally I applied to JCU because they're like, well, if you're going to be in Queensland, don't do postgrad, do undergrad at Townsville. So you're allowed to apply there and Monash. That was it. Like they actually
Okay.
banned me from applying anywhere else, and I got into Monash, which was very fortuitous. But like the other courses, they were like, oh, you should also like. They actually didn't think I'd get into med, so they were like, oh, try for like biomed and this that. And like, look, I don't want to do biomed. I'll just rather do some other hardcore engineering because at the time biomed didn't have interesting things. Like I think I applied to mechatronics and stuff, and I think I got
Hey, I
into
think that
like
was my number 2 or 3 choice, I think.
yeah,
That was
and
my
then the
non-medical
other
choice.
yeah, and well, I did apply to this combined, and I got in. Like I actually rang up
Mm.
going, I don't know how this works because I think I missed your guideline, and they looked it up. They're like, oh, based on your score, you're just in. So if you want it, just let us know. We'll put you down right now. I was like, I'll
Sweet.
ring you back. It was like a combined, like a MBA and law, but basically it was this course where your projects were like doing the bookwork for like BHP, and you finished and you went on to that career trajectory. And I was like,
Mm.
I actually found business quite interesting, but I didn't know enough about it. But eventually, med ended up happening, and yeah, And that's like, I feel like mine was a much more tortuous journey. Like I had a couple of uncles who were doctors, but I didn't have like,
Mm.
I didn't see med every day like you did.
Yeah, I think it's kind of one of those weird things because you see it all the time. You're like, well, I guess that's where I'm going. Oh, hey, that's where I ended
Yeah.
up. Occasionally
Yeah.
takes
Because
some
my
conscious
dad
thought.
was, yeah, because my dad was like one of the general managers for the country for Lipton. So I saw like the
Mm.
management stuff. So then I was like,
Ah,
like the,
yeah, see,
so
like
that's
me,
why I
like
kind of applied to.
business or management and that kind of stuff. Never seen it. Didn't know it's a thing people do.
Yeah. Yeah. So I suppose this is the other section that you didn't think was going to be interesting. But what did you think of med school?
Yeah, well, it was different because for me, it's the first time where I've actually like started with a whole bunch of people who are roughly on the same starting place, if you like. Because
Mm,
throughout school, I would be, for example, because I skipped up a bunch of grades, but then also I was doing like my maths class was in a different grade as well to my normal class to this, that, and the other. So sometimes I'm in the primary school, sometimes I'm in the high school, just because, it's wonderful. They don't really, the way, it's not like in Melbourne where there's 500 different expansion classes or something. It's just like, well,
yeah, and
if you're
dear
born in this
listeners,
one, we'll just put you up a couple of levels.
Chandra is literally like I think the second youngest in our year group. I think
I think
Joel is
there's
the
a couple more.
youngest.
Yeah, I think there's one more.
No,
Ian, I think might be
I don't know about Ian, but I know
potentially. Don't
Joel's
know. But
December.
yeah,
Joel is
yeah,
like
yeah,
December, so he
yeah,
like beats everyone out of the water. Um,
yep. He wins.
yeah, so I think we're in the I think we're both in like the say the 10 youngest in our year group. But yeah,
Mm.
Joel by a country mile. It's just like yeah. Anyway, and
So
as
for me,
a
it was
result,
interesting because even through school, because I'd be sort of moving through different groups, wasn't really part of one year level per se either. Um, so
yeah, same.
then coming into med, it was interesting because it was like, oh, okay, everybody's going through together, and also uh, it was a very interesting bunch of people, and you're like, oh, you can find your own group of weirdos within this bunch of weirdos.
That's true. That's true. Yeah. See, for me, because I moved, like, did you have any friends coming across from Warrnambool?
No, because I was in Melbourne for the last 2 years before starting med, but
Oh, okay.
um, yeah,
But any of your
it was.
friends, like,
So there's one guy from Warrnambool actually who was in med school as well. But again, by then, I'd sort of left Warrnambool as well for a couple of years, that sort of thing as well. So the people I knew I suppose, from Warrnambool, they're not obviously there. So pretty much like
yeah,
a fresh start there.
yeah.
So that was kind of interesting actually. And the other thing is, it's that whole thing of, oh yeah, cool. Now you get to be the dumbest person in the room again.
Yeah, that was probably like the biggest thing was like, because I did high school in Queensland, and let's just say my high school loved my high school, don't get me wrong,
Mm-mm.
but we were renowned for our drug problems and teenage pregnancies and not academia. So let's just say no one is here from that year. A lot actually ended up becoming doctors, but not eventually. Like a
Everyone
few
finds
went
their
down
own
the
path.
engineering line.
Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it was again like the make the new friends thing, is the culture shock, was the
Mm.
fact that and again coming from Queensland, the culture shock was reverse. Like everything is so kind of westernized over there. Then you
Mm.
come here and you're like, Asians, brown people, where you been? Like, you guys exist here? Like, what the hell?
What?
So all this adaptation had to go out the window because I'm like, oh, kind of like
They can be
everyone
brown
gets it.
again.
Everyone's kind of like, there's so much minority. Like, Melbourne is very multicultural as compared to like, the Gold Coast back was in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And it's again, it was, yeah, you get used to being like the smart kid, and you're like, everyone is equally, if not way smarter. So you got to like, it for me, it was kind of like, oh, it becomes like a personality trait because people just ask you about stuff, right? Whereas then it
Mm.
was kind of readapting to going, oh, everyone can answer. No one's going to ask you the dumb questions. So you got to find
Yep.
like other little quirks that it's almost like you start wearing the personality suit of Smart Kid, and then you have to move on to the other things, and you're like, oh yeah, I used to do this other crap, and yeah. So it was, yeah. Did you find that med school was what you expected the entire way through,
Mm-hmm. Didn't really know
or what
what
did
to
you
expect,
expect
to
of
be
med school?
honest. don't really know. Something about there'll probably be some learning and probably rock up to the hospital a bit. But, I think the biggest learning actually that because I think one thing that changed through med school for me was, in first year I was like, yes, keen, I've got my folder, I'm gonna like study and like, study a lot and things. And then I distinctly remember somebody gave some really good advice, which was med school is going to be the last time that you get to enjoy and be unemployed for a long time. Um, so
Says the guy on a boat who's currently unemployed.
yeah, well, hey, still a long time since then, all right?
Yeah. I think they had very different definitions of what unemployed meant. Not
Yeah.
luxury yacht sailing the Mediterranean.
Hey, luxury is relative, all right? There's a yacht in front of me where
Okay.
the
People who
like
are
Russian
watching the
super
video
yachts.
on Spotify, that it is like a pretty new yacht with like some really nice interiors and a double bed. We can call it a luxury yacht. It might not be Russian oligarch level, but when you can say it's a floating house because you have different sections and you have like your own closed off master cabin and there's two other guest bedrooms, yeah, when you can start going, which zone of the boat am I in? Oh yes, that's right. And when I have a dashboard monitoring each section's power drop, you're on a luxury yacht, especially when we're doing this over Starlink and he's streaming HD
This is
in
true.
Netflix.
This is true. We'll call it a mildly comfortable house, shall we? We'll agree to
Mildly
disagree.
comfortable. Didn't you just add a hammock?
Yeah, actually, it's so good. Just hung the hammock off the back. It is amazing.
Anyway, before we get sidetracked,
I'd like to say the
yeah,
hammock
because
was
I
also
think,
€11 on Amazon, but still. Um, yeah, so getting without the sidetrack, but yeah, so that whole thing about, enjoy, I think that also helped me quite a bit because normally, like, you're smart, you're competitive, and you're like, oh man, these people are really smart. If I want to compete, I have to study a lot. I was like,
yeah.
well, actually, if I just don't really try to compete, then you don't have to study an awful lot. You can get
Well,
by
I think,
without not a lot, which suddenly gives you a lot more time.
and
And
I think we
so
were also the
that I
new
found was probably
year.
the biggest change for me, where it went from I need to go hardcore to, actually, let's just chill and enjoy and relax because I think we end up in the same place no matter what.
Well, this was like, remember, Monash? I think we were the first or second year they were trialing this, where they changed a lot of the early assessments to like pass grade only. Like they kept score,
Yeah,
but they didn't tell us. So then,
yeah, yeah,
it
yeah.
became less
They
competitive. But I think it was
well,
kind of good because
I think the thing is they told us it was pass or fail only, and then on the last minute they gave us a grade for the end of year. I was like,
yeah,
what? Damn, should have paid
but
attention.
the well,
I
yes and
felt
no.
like that
Like I
was a bit of
mean,
a rug pull there.
yeah, but I think it made the vibe less competitive. Like as in,
Yeah, much
our
less
year group
competitive.
as compared to like say some of the other unis. I feel like
Mm,
everyone knows everyone, and everyone kind
yeah.
of like everyone turned out all right, but it was much more collegiate. Like
Mm,
for
yeah.
example, like say you found your circle of friends, I had my circle of friends, but it wasn't like you clicked off. It was kind of like, oh, that's like Chandra's group of friends. Like how we became friends is like we would then have events where both groups combined and did stuff, and then it would
Mm,
split off again, and there was
yeah.
like it was less clicky than I remember high school being, where it's like
Mm,
you've got a big group of friends and you kind of play there. Whereas in mid school, I felt like you're loosely bound, and every like especially for our year, I felt like
mm,
a lot of people intermeshed. No one had these cliques that you couldn't be part of. I'm sure there were, but I was oblivious to them. But most people were nice and friendly, and that was kind
yeah.
of refreshing.
Mm,
But I don't think I actually like. I think like you, for the first 6 months or a year, I studied really hard or tried to, because I was like, and it was also like going from being given a set syllabus. Like high school is very much like there's going to be a game, there's going to be a quiz.
mm,
Here's the book, it has all the bits. But med's like infinite info. There's going to be a quiz. It doesn't count. Go nuts. And you're like, okay, I could
what?
be drowning in the info. So I tried for like 6 months, and then like, okay, I'm just gonna enjoy for a bit because if it's going to be pass
Yeah.
grade anyway, yeah. But I think it only kind of clicked like in third year or fourth year,
For context, that's when we go to hospital. So for our degrees, first 2 years you are in uni, and then 3, 4, 5 is in hospital. So you're still learning, but you're kind of learning not really on the job, but in context. And I think that was a big shift from the old medical schools, which I think is a really good thing, because you suddenly see, oh, that's why I need to learn that stupid thing. But equally, you can also see, well, this is stupid. Nobody uses this in daily practice.
But I think the actual shift was less. This is the pragmatic reason. It's kind of watching and like we had those little rotations, right? But it was in fourth year, I think, one of the years where I think you had to see like a whole pregnancy through to catch a baby because you had a number of births that you had to do, and also psych where you had to follow a patient through to write up some report. It was must have been fourth year because that's
I think that was the fourth year stuff. Yeah,
it was kind of like around then where it clicked. It's like, hang on. You gotta take this seriously because it has literal life or death implications, and that's when it got serious. Like, it wasn't just like to pass a grade is to do this. It was just like, no, this has actual direct impact. Like, if I stuff this up, there is consequences, and it is major. And that click changed. Like, it's that emotional core that makes you retain info. I remember it was like during fourth year, I think was the next bit, like from first year to fourth year. Yeah, it must have been fourth year. I didn't really do that much. And then, that's right, because in third year I was out in the country, so it was kind of like that was my first moving out of home experience. It was like all this new stuff, so I was paying attention, but I was also just learning how to live by myself. Like, it was a group of friends, but it was the adjustment because I was out in like rural Victoria. But fourth year it kind of clicked in, and I was like, oh crap, med school's ending soon. Gotta actually learn stuff.
Better learn something.
Well, yeah. And so when you finished, had you picked your specialty? Like, were you like,
yeah, so I was very keen on off-that actually, because like the first thing was like you get to shoot lasers. I distinctly remember like on a rotation, one of the bosses like, all right, come this way. And we just got to like shoot lasers at some phone. I was like, this is awesome.
But then why off-that? Like urology does it, ENT does it.
What was the first? I don't know. Person was like, let's play with the laser and shoot some stuff. I was like, well, this is cool.
That's like my one regret for anesthetics. There's no lasers.
Yeah, no lasers. Like, why would you even bother? And then I always knew that was like something surgical, because I was like, yeah, no, got to be something hands-on. And I'm not exactly a thinking person. And I was like, oh yeah, I like the surgical approach. There's a problem, fix the problem, find another problem. Don't have a very long attention span. And then the more I looked into the I just had that really good combination of things, which I thought I would like. But again, like, doing med school, like, how do you know what you want 10, 20 years from then? You have no idea. That's why I did a research year in Ophthalm. I was like, oh yeah, cool. Unfortunately, it is a bit, annoying to get into. So if I want to have it as an option, I may as well start playing the game now. But then I think, interestingly, after that, as part of the playing the game, you do the not ophthalmology, but things around the eyeball specialties to try and learn more stuff. And then I did neurosurgery. I was like, that was amazing. So much fun. Again, surgery, hands-on, get to the point. There's a problem, fix the problem, move on. And the operation stuff was really cool. And I happened to be really lucky because I was in a place which happens to be probably as a junior person, one of the bestest places to do it. You normally hear all these horror stories of, it was terrible, no one's supporting me, blah, blah, blah. I happened to be in just by chance, happened to be in an awesome place. So I had a great time, and I thought, maybe I'll do this instead. But then after a bit, kind of clicked that, I think I was like you as well. You're like, I think you're becoming a bit of a cranky bastard.
You rang me once. I distinctly remember the call because I was walking actually not far from here, and you rang up. This is when you were in East Melbourne, and you're like, this happened. And I was like, okay, look, it's terrible, but can I just say, if you had some sleep, you would be laughing because it is actually genuinely funny. And you're like, what? No, I was like, but think about it. And then you're like, oh yeah, it is funny. But you were just so tired and cranky. And I'm like, yeah, just and then I think I remember just going, hey, just reality check. if you're going to commit down neurosurge, this is going to be you for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
You want that.
And yeah, so it was interesting actually, because I was like, I had the best possible opportunity. It was awesome, heaps of fun. But then there was some other stuff. It's like, if I did that, that'd be it, all in kind of thing, because it's kind of you do that, and I have very addictive personality, so if I did it, that would have been it, like fully, like 8 days a week, going on kind of thing. And also, the other thing I noticed is like the people you surround yourself with is kind of who you end up becoming. And all the neurosurgeons, they're great, but they work on it. Whereas I remember like all the ophthalmologists, they don't work very hard. I was like, oh yeah, right.
Oh, so like this part of
Not
the
all of
story, I
them,
think we've
but
gone
there's
down similar paths.
more chilled out sort of people. I was like, well, if I want to have a chilled out life, I should probably spend more time with chilled out people.
Well, I would like to
So
rebut this and say, look, I don't actually do crosswords. I've played Wordle for like a week. I don't even know how to play Sudoku, nor do I cycle as frequently as my colleagues. So,
I'd just like to say he has a lot of coffee breaks and an iPad. I'll leave it at that.
I don't even have Apple products. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I think
that's sort of switching back to Ofdal later. And for me, I think the thing with Ofdal is really like the operating. And I think for me, the big thing in med is that sort of kept me in med despite everything else pulling away to do other things and whatnot. Along the way has been operating, just because I like hands-on operating. I get to do stuff. And it's like a thing you get to do where it's like making something, but it's slightly different every time. And maybe not drastically different, just subtly, tiny little bit different every single time. So you can get a little bit better, a little bit better, a little bit better.
It's like that fine motor craftsman's thing.
And so, yeah, you can be like, this is this, same operation again and again. It's like, well, actually, you tweak a little here, tweak a little there, tweak a little here, tweak a little there.
Yeah. That addictive personality is not showing through.
No, not at all. But you can direct it in the right way.
Yeah. I mean, I think we went through a similar phase. That's why I was like, I didn't realize neurosurge was that phase for you. So I think mine happened a bit earlier because, throughout med school, I was like, yeah, going to be a GP. Then I was like, no, cardiology because curry choice. Yeah. Parents said, heart specialist. Woohoo.
Yeah.
Then
all your friends will have a heart attack, so get in on it.
And then then I was like, hang on. That involves going to clinics and sitting down. And I don't do very well sitting down. Like, I don't know how I think computers and like the techie stuff because I just get obsessed with the problem. But talking other people and sitting down, kill me now. So then I was like, all right, I'm going to do surgery. And then basically all of this, specifically in third year, that's right. I remember I was like, the general surgeons, they do everything. So, when you're in the country, they're like the superheroes, right? This comes in, they operate. This comes in, they operate. They're like that. And I just remember there's one case where this surgeon has been like, it was like this Eastern European guy, and he had like, that kind of weird sense of humor. He was showing us x-rays of random things up people's bottoms, like that they'd saved up from over the years. As you do. It's like, yeah, I mean, just, it's just kind of like, this is what literally, I don't know, it's like a light bulb, what looks like on an x-ray film, right? Anyway, he was just trying to be entertaining for like a surgical shoot. But straight after, he's like, yeah, come to theater, we've got this guy. And I just remember it was like this old guy who had really bad schizophrenia, and he was just constipated, but supposedly had been for weeks. And so they had to disimpact him in theater because he was just bound up, that he was vomiting uncontrollably. And this guy's been a consultant for 30 years, right? So I just remember the first incision he makes, because everything is like rock hard. And this fecal material came out, and the smell, it was so bad. And he's sitting there going, oh yeah, it's like, it's probably been bound up for weeks. And I was like, I am not training for 30, 40 years to do that operation. I cannot be doing, like, that smell was so bad. Like, I still remember that exact moment and going, I can't breathe. I need to leave right now. And this is like someone who was obsessed with theater at the time. So I was like, holy moly, you can't do that. I'm like, all right, colorectal's gone, general surgery's gone. So I narrowed it down to neurosurge as well, actually. So just needing like the last few rotations of neurosurge, I really liked it. Probably for the same reasons. It's like really interesting operating, even though it's very long. It was just kind of like, yeah, like you're probably on the more addictive end thingy side, but I do also have like, I remember as an intern, going and assisting, just as you do for like just gallbladders and whatnot. But my pager, which would be in my pocket, would go off, and I wouldn't hear it because I was too focused. Like the nurses would go, "Are you gonna get that? Like that's your pager." I'm like, "What?" Like, and even the 10-hour cases would go like that, and I was just getting super focused. But like you, at the end of one of the rotations, like two of my other friends came out going, "You're just a really angry man." During that time, because it was the sort like my surgery was really nice. We used to do a pre-round before the round, so he could tell me what to talk about, so that it would look like I knew my stuff, and he would take me through the steps of the operation. So if I got grilled, like it was just really good. Like we'd have a coffee break, and he'd go through all of it. It was just like really supportive. And as a result, I had a great time. But I remembered that, yeah, I was like, if I do this, like you, I'm just going to be, this is it. And I had other interests. And I just remembered at the time, you couldn't do anesthetics in med school. Like there was no rotation. So the only way to do it would be to rotate to Malaysia in final year. So I did like an ICU term and anesthetics term. And during anesthetics, I was like, it's one of those specialties that aren't like, how do you explain it? It's like you put people to sleep. Like, can't you just put the sleep button and that's that? Like, isn't that it? Yeah, right. Like, then, like genuinely, I had no idea, right? Like, you don't get exposed to anesthetics. When I was in surgery, it was like they're over there. They push the sleep button, but then they sit there. They occasionally tell me not to pull on this. I'm like, but that's not your thing. I want to pull on this thing, right? For context, we were doing this big laparotomy. I was pulling on the vena cava and shutting off the blood supply to half the body, and so yeah. Yeah, it literally was actually pretty bad, but I had no idea, right? I distinctly remember going, "That's my blood supply. Can you please stop doing that?" I was like, "What?" But during Malaysia, there was this. We were just sitting down for lunch, and this I think was like the day that I was like, "Whoa, maybe this is going to be something that I really like." We're sitting down, we're having lunch, and it's like, Malaysia, there's like good food that's super cheap. And when you're a student, that's a big thing. So I just ordered like this Malaysian curry and this, that, and we're sitting in the tea room, and one of the alarm buzzers went off. And I just saw 3 other consultants just go up, run to recovery. And it was this tiny kid that had arrested, this neonate, like newborn baby. And one went to the head, one started doing stuff, one was doing CPR. And I was with my registrar, like the other trainee, and she just looked on. And I distinctly remember going, they're going too fast. I don't even know how to help, right? And resus done, intubated, and back to ICU. And it felt like, time slowed down. Like it felt like it was like half an hour worth. And then we sat down, and then everyone, like, it was like there was this pause button. They paused the conversation. They went and did this amazing thing, and they came back and they just unpaused, and they're like, literally, it was like mid-sentence they went back to what they were. I was like, heck, and I looked, and it'd been like 8 minutes. So they just went from lunch, so like you're on super relaxed mode, to peak performance, and then back down. It's a square waveform. It's not this gradual ramp up. It was like bang, right? And then I was just like,
well, you don't
what
want
the hell?
your
Like,
food to you don't want your food to get cold.
yeah, but like, where else do you see that level of square waveform in anything, where you just go like 0 to 100, back down to 0? And I'm like, so they were just ready. Like, they're just eating lunch, and they're just ready to go right there and then. That alarm sounds, they jump in, they fix it, they go back to enjoying lunch. Like, I had never before seen anything like that. And I was like, wow. And yeah, like one of my first cases ever as a doctor, like, well, actually, we hadn't even started. It's during internship. I'm sure you've heard about it. Like my very first patient, before we even started, I was literally doing the paperwork, and they passed away. And so, like, I had no idea what to do. I wasn't even a doctor yet. Like, we were about to go to orientation 10 minutes after this. So I've always kind of gone like, what do you do in a critical care situation? And I remember after the internship sort of phase, I was like, oh, look, I just found that 99% is fun. Surgery was still 100% fun. But if I did that, I would be an angry person who really enjoyed surgery. and all the other things that I liked growing up, like the science stuff, the tech stuff, like podcasting and creating stuff, I don't think I could do it. Like it would die by the time I finished because I would be too angry and I don't know if I could restart. So hence I was like anesthetics, because it was like you, the people they had a bit more varied backgrounds, but also it's challenging, but it values the diversity more. Like it is a specialty where if you bring in like the surgical perspective, that actually helps rather than hinders. Whereas I think in surgery, there is lots of ways of doing the same thing, but you got to be in that general ilk. You can't, like, you still got to make that cut to make this thing. You can do subtle differences. Whereas you can, I'm sure you see it in your anesthetists, there's like a wide variance.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So it's kind of like, yeah, you can tweak it a lot more. So hence I ended up picking anesthetics, and to this day, do not regret it.
Likewise, I'm very happy.
Yeah. Any regrets?
Moral of the story, ophthalmology is the best one. So choose that one.
Well, actually, like I was going to say, like this is part of the regrets advice thing, is like medicine is very, very flexible if you know how to tweak it, because it's like a
I think you
conveyor
don't
belt
even
sort of thing.
need to know how to tweak it, but yeah, like if you're a med student or something, or even, early years or whatever, or any stage, like medicine is infinitely flexible. I've been
I don't think it's
seeking out
sold
people
like that.
who, yeah, it's definitely not sold like that, but you can find people who have made it flexible, and you can generally find people who have made it flexible in the direction that might interest you. You have to seek it out because it's not the default setting, but that's something I spent a bit of time doing, is trying to find people who do medical people who also do other cool stuff, and they're out there, and they're more than happy to share and teach you stuff. So I've learned a lot from those kind of people as to doing tech stuff. What's the different ways of doing that as a med person? What's the way of doing business stuff as a med person in various different ways? How do you go floating on a boat?
Yeah, whilst doing a podcast.
Exactly. All sorts of people that you can find to learn from. So the knowledge is maybe not there in front of you and it's not obvious, but yeah, you can make of it what you feel like at various points in time.
Yeah, I think the other thing is like it's a long game. So I think especially if you've gotten into med, you're used to there's going to be a quiz. You got to finish the quiz, and you got to do well on the quiz. Then you move on to the next quiz. And if you approach it like that, you'll start to get stuck later on. I think the more senior you get, it becomes the long game becomes important, which is these are the building blocks, and it's you're gonna have to do the same thing for a very long time, but the way you do it has to be enjoyable. And if you're trying to do something atypical, you got to find the right pieces to move. Like I think like anesthetics somehow is related to going overseas a lot, doing expedition medicine, doing retrievals. Like they're all like I got to see places that I would never have for any other job. But you got to twist it just right to get it to fit. Like I know one of the other intensive care guys went and spent a year in Antarctica. I almost was about to do that, but
Yeah, I remember we're talking about that a lot.
yeah. Anyway, like I didn't want to do 18 months. That was basically it. If it was like a year, I'd be like, yep, done. I was like, that's just too long. Anyway, like, but it's infinitely flexible if you want it to be. But I think the other part of it is that it is a long conveyor belt, or that's the default. But then it suddenly stops when you finish. And then it's like, hang on, what happened to the guide rails and the pathways? Like you can get swept up into the usual building stuff, but you have to then start, and like most people have to go, oh, I want the public job pathway or this pathway. It's like you suddenly get options. And by that stage, it's been so long that you've got these rigid rails if you're not looking for the cracks, that it almost feels uncomfortable not to be told what to do next. I don't think we had the problem, but I've seen other people have this problem where they're like, well, what do I do now? It's like, well, what do you want? It's like, I don't know what I want.
Like, what do you mean? What do I want?
Yeah. It's like, aren't I meant to be doing something? It's like, you get to choose. And I think this is like the foreign thing for other career moves, where it's all like about what thing you want to do. med is portrayed very linearly, but there's all these offshoots that you can do. And yeah, I think the other biggest thing is like when you get to the end, it's called a medical opinion because it's just your opinion, and you have to be okay with that. Like
Yep.
your opinion cancels cases, your opinion changes drugs, your opinion changes how this person responds to, like, and there's a lot of weight in what you think, and
Mhm.
it's weirdly kind of uncomfortable for the first little while.
Yeah, yeah. And also the fact that you know that it's not that it is an opinion, because often there's, 5 different answers which would be not invalid. But at the end of the day, you pick sort of, your best understanding and your reasoning, and that becomes your opinion. And there will be other people having a different opinion, which is not invalid as well.
Yeah, but I think because of the culture of medicine and how you like it selects for the people, you're brought up to expect a right answer. So to go from black and white to like gray, and it's your gray, like
Yeah.
you are the person on, like, I've been the anesthetist on, and I'm like, this case cannot go ahead. Why? And they'll be like, so and so would do it. I'm like, cool, call them. But I don't think I can safely do this, or this needs to be changed, right? And it's just like they're big calls. Like it's literally emergency cases have to be delayed. You restructure like 10 other people's day, and patients have to wait, and this, that, and the other. Like they're big calls, but you have to get comfortable owning that, which I think is, it just kind of
Just
comes at
one
you.
coffee break or 2 coffee breaks.
Or 7. Actually, most recently, I had to make a call on extubating someone that I didn't think would be very safe. And even intensive care, like, oh, like just extubate and say, like, look, if we do that, I genuinely think this is going to be 3 times worse. So I kept this person intubated. But basically, it meant the entire day I babysat one person for 7 hours. So instead of being able to do 10 cases, we did 3. Still think it was the right call, but it was just like the entire time I was sitting there going, am I making the wrong call here? But yeah, stuff like that. You got to be comfortable with it. Any words of wisdom for you?
One thing which I guess I wish I learned earlier is learning how to learn as a topic itself.
We've done a
I think it's
podcast on
something
this,
we've
right?
touched on earlier podcast, but it's a really valuable skill. Somebody else just asked me about that recently as well. But if you're ever curious,
Send him a
start with
link.
The 4-Hour Chef and Moonwalking with Einstein. Good books to start with.
Which one's the
But
other one?
Moonwalking with Einstein, basically around
Okay, I haven't
memory
read that one.
things. But yeah, really useful because
All right. You got to do the thing where you
changed the
actually
way
have
that,
these things.
for example, no matter what you're doing, it doesn't have to be med, but if you're in something that requires you to be able to gain a lot of knowledge quickly, efficiently, learning how to learn is a big thing.
We'll link the previous episodes and Chandra's mentioned books down below.
Yes.
In the show notes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
What about you?
I think I kind of touched on it, but I think, yeah, it's a compounding game. The people that you work with will be the people giving you the opinions because you can't know everything. So it's kind of like there is a benefit to just staying in touch and being friends because you don't know. Like you'll try to ring up a cardiology consult. You're like, oh, is there a guy that I did that rotation with, or this person that I did that thing with? Yeah, learning how to learn is important, but I think the other part is just it's kind of like, well, I'll link to Simon Sinek's start with why. For me, med became infinitely more fun when the why clicked, which is kind of like you have unlike other careers, and I've had this chat with like other friends where, like, even my brother, like we were chatting when I was visiting London, and he's like, oh, I've got to model out. He works for BT, like British Telecom, and they're like, oh, they're modeling out how to turn off 4G and go to 5G and then 6G and the costing and da da da. And he's like, this person gave me the wrong model and this. And so I was like, we had this bad case happen. And he just we're like walking around London and he just stopped. And he's like, wow. I'm like, what? He's like, well, when something goes wrong, someone dies. For me, there's a number of those mistakes. I catch it. That's that, right? Like medicine is weirdly rewarding in the fact that you get direct cause effect relationships. Like you do something, something happens. You see the real world impact. Like the thing that you and I are protected from is this existential thing of, are you doing anything meaningful? Like it's not really a question that comes into your head that often.
You kind of get pretty immediate feedback of that.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of becoming more rare, especially in knowledge work and stuff where there's complex systems and whatnot. Like there's not so many coalface knowledge worky things. Like medicine's kind of like an architect will design stuff, but then if someone has to go and build it, they will eventually see it, but there's like all these steps along the way. I give a drug, that blood pressure will drop, or if it's not, we're in trouble. But anyway, it's very immediate. It's like your cataracts are like in 10 minutes.
That's one of the nice
that's
things
going to
about
have a different
eye
lens.
surgery. You do your operation, next day, patient's like, I can see stuff again.
Yeah. I did eye surgeries all morning with our good friend Rahul. So eye surgeries have been the flavor of the day.
Moral of the story, like I said, ophthalmology based.
Okay, can I just say, you guys give us crap about like taking coffee breaks. Rahul insisted, like he was caning it today. Why? He wanted to go have chicken. He wanted to go to El Jannah and have a fried chicken. Like the guy is obsessed with this stuff. I did not suggest this.
Was it good?
Yeah. Like, I mean, I introduced him to it. Now it's like every month he's like, last month I was like, hey, can we go try this place? Like, Raph, I hear what you're saying, but chicken. I was like, okay.
It's like, I've thought about it, but chicken.
Yeah, every month it's become like I have to go for fried chicken now.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So you guys, we might have our coffee breaks, but you guys have like weird obsessive traits too.
Us? Never.
With that is another episode done. Leave us some feedback so I can, and also comment so that I can have messages.
Please, God, please stop doing that. No. And we will see a drastic drop off in listenership right there.
It's also the end of the episode, right? So like and subscribe and all that jazz. And please do leave us a review, both either on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Or Apple Podcasts.
Yeah, and a written review is infinitely better. It seems to be, they look at that as a thing. Also, we are starting to get a hang of how to do this on a boat, so we should go back to our regular scheduled interview episodes as well. But stay tuned. We'll try to be a little bit more regular, but it's really dependent on where Chandra is and where the boat is. So
actually,
this season is going to be
depends on what the weather is. Which, you know.
Well, this season is going to be a bit rocky.
We will go with the wind.
All right. With those bad jokes, we are out. Any last words?
Learn how to learn.
Learn how to learn. Well, surprises that it's
okay, sure.
Next time.
See you, everybody.